stop for a moment and consider what I'm going to tell you next. You know, when you read the Gospel of John, and I've told you this before, when you read the Gospel of John chapter 1 and verse 1, John makes a startling comment. Because John is simply using the Greek of his day, to be particular, Koine Greek, the simpler street language of the Greeks. And it says NRK in the beginning, and we could take time to talk about the NRK principle. This idea, what John is saying here, is the same thing that Moses wrote in Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, NRK, chiefly the first existence, the ground of being from which everything came out. Behind him, there's nothing else. NRK. In the beginning, in that first principle, in that beginning of all things, in the Alpha, is the other Greek reference. In the beginning was the Logos. Now when he said the Logos, up until then, he and the Greeks were saying the same language. Because when he spoke of the Logos, the Greeks understood what he meant. Oh, you're talking about this high power that is outside of us, this force, this thing that is responsible for reality and matter. John, we are with you up until then. In the beginning was the Logos, the Word. Where John begins to have a problem with these people is in the second part of that verse. The Logos was with God. And the Greek word he uses there is a word that has a root in another Greek word prosopon, which really means face to face. Pros is the word he uses there. With translates the word pros. In the beginning was the Word, and the Logos, prosteos, the Logos was with God. And here he begins to bring us into the nature of God. And what he's saying here is that Logos, that power, sat in very intimate, close, inseparable, face-to-face communion with God. Now begin to understand there is more than one entity in what John is talking about here. Can you see it? When he begins to describe the Logos, he describes the Logos in conjunction, in connection, in sync, alongside, together with another entity that he now calls God. So there is two here, aren't there? And then for the avoidance of doubt, he says, and the Logos was God. Now, what John has done in verse 1 is to introduce the Trinitarian concept. In fact, if you're going to describe the idea of the Trinity, we must find it squarely in the Gospel of John, chapter 1, verse 1. One, God is one. NRK, the monarch, the singular, the one God, the chief, that which sat at the beginning. NRK. The arch principle. By the way, from that word, RK, is where we get our word archbishop, the first bishop. And so on and so forth, the very first one. God is one, but then he begins to introduce a plurality within him, and we begin to see the nature of God as one, but plural. Now, when it comes to verse 2 and verse 3, we begin to understand that no. This that we dealt with as one but plural, God, is a person. Because now John calls him with a pronoun he. He was was from the beginning with God. He is not a thing, is not a force. And the Greeks are saying, all right, John, now we have a problem with you. Now there's a problem. Because you're saying that in that arcade principle, in that one entity, there is actually multiples in them. There's more than one. We are still thinking about that. Now in verse 2 and 3, you're telling us in fact that one in plurality and plurality in one is actually a person. Not a force, not a thing, but a personality. In verse 3, he links them all together. Because he says, through him, through that Logos, was all things made. And nothing was made which was made without him. And John is saying, that person is the one who created everything you see. And how could he? How could he create all these things? Why is he uncaused? Who caused him? He answers that in verse 3, verse 4 and verse 5. In him, in the Logos, was life, Zoe. The unoriginated life. The uncaused life. Aurelius Augustine, back in the 5th century, referred to God as the uncaused cause. As I told you, the law of causality, the law of cause and effect, does not say everything has a cause. No, it says every effect has a cause. God is not an effect. Why is God not an effect? Because God was from the beginning, verse 1. Because in verse 3 and 4, God has the power of life within himself, that which we call the power of being. The question that remains to be answered, therefore, and I think this is the question of apologia, this is the apologetic question. Yeah, we can see that in the Bible, of course we can. That the one is plural and the plural is one. We can see that. We can see that from an exposition of John chapter 1 verse 1 all the way. We can see that. We can also see that, say, in 2 Corinthians 13:14, the love of God, the fellowship of the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God the Father, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit. And so we see that. We can see that in 1 Corinthians chapter 12. The services of the Lord, the activities of the Father, the gifts of the Spirit. We can see that. We can see that in Ephesians 1. The Trinitarian doctrine is all over the place. We can see that in Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, El or him. And I told you the prefix El usually refers to a plurality. We can see that. But the apologetic question, the apologetic difficulty has been, why is that not a contradiction in terms? Come on now. You have knowledge to answer that question through the lectures we've done so far. Why is 3 in 1 and 1 in 3 not a contradiction? Because remember, we cannot violate, we cannot negotiate the law of non-contradiction. God cannot be 1 and 3 at the same time and in the same what? Relationship. Very good. So do tell me, why are we not violating the law of non-contradiction by dealing, or rather insisting on the doctrine of the Holy Trinity? Why are we not violating the law of non-contradiction? Come on, give me an answer, quickly. Surely you can do this. Kevin?
Said that God is one,
Yes.
but exists in three distinct persons.
Correct.
So, maybe repeat your question.
We are saying that God is one and God is three. That appears like a contradiction. Now what I'm asking you is, why are we not violating, why are we not compromising the law of non-contradiction, which says A cannot be non-A at the same time and in the same relationship, all right? Which means God cannot be one and three at the same time and in the same relationship. Why is that? Thinking of the nature of God now.
So saying God is one, but He exists in three distinct persons.
Uh-huh.
So we don't contradict the law of, because God is one, exists in three, but not in the same relationship, but at the same time.
So describe the relationship for me. Describe the relationships in which He does not exist in.
You have God the Father, God the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
No, you're missing the point. You're missing the point. I think you're missing the point. Malia, can you help your people? These are your people.
tuelewe ya kwamba Mungu Baba ni nani na Mwana ni nani.
No, you missed it. You missed it already. Umeanza tu ndio kutoka barabara huko. Yes, Fred.
What I know, according to the law of the cause and effect. So
no, we are in the law of non-contradiction. We are not having the law of cause and effect in view at all.
So my answer was an effect is a cause, so is not an effect.
No, you missed it.
Connection.
Yeah, you can. Now we are thinking, you see, even if you're missing it, but you're interacting with it. That's what I want. You're interacting with it. That's a good thing, all right? So never mind that you're missing it, that's all right. I have no problem with that. Of course, I'll give you wrong if you put that on paper.
Can I use this?
I don't think so. This is a philosophical issue. Yes.
But according to me, I think not the truth. That's why we don't know the truth.
What you're saying is true, but it doesn't answer our question. Is the God of truth? Yes, of course.
But we hatubishani ama tuwabi nao kwa hilo jambo sababu tunajua kweli.
You see, let's recap the law of non-contradiction, all right? Let's recap the law of non-contradiction. A cannot be non-A at the same time and in the same. So there are two things that define the law of non-contradiction: time and relationship. So A cannot be B. You can say, this is a phone and this is a machete at the same time and in the same relationship. Give me your pen. Thank you, Francis. Santisan. What is this? A pen. But somebody called it a gun. In fact, somebody said, no, I'm telling you, somebody called it a gun. Somebody said, you have the gun, AK-47, give me this gun, and I will defeat you. And it's true. So one person called the same thing a pen, the other called it a gun. They are both right. But if the same person at the same time and in the same relationship, call this, if I call this a gun and a pen at the same time and in the same relationship, I'll be wrong. I'll be violating the law of non-contradiction. Once I've said this is a pen, I can't call it a gun. I'm violating the law of non-contradiction. Now, wait, Fred, wait. I can call this a pen, but I can also call it a gun, so long as I'm not using that reference in the same relationship. For example, if I'm going to mark your work, what am I going to use? A pen, right? I'm marking your work. This is a pen. It's a teacher-student relationship. The purpose, the relationship, is to assess you. What if I was writing this pen as a judge, pronouncing death sentence on Wilfred Mukenya? This is a weapon now. Isn't it true? It is a pen and a weapon at the same time, but not in the same relationship. If I use this pen to mark your work, or rather to write a recommendation letter to be employed, that's a good thing, isn't it? Oh, use my pen to make you succeed. And then the same pen is used by a judge to kill Kevin. It's a pen, isn't it? But it's both a tool and a weapon at the same time, but not in the same relationship. In other words, the purpose for which it is being used is different, though the equipment is the same. Are you following what I'm saying? So we're saying, thank you very much, God cannot be one and three at the same time and in the same relationship. If we say God is one at the same time and in the same relationship, we are violating the law of non-contradiction. Let me give another illustration, because again, we have to get this to your thinking. I told you this the other time I was here. I'm your teacher, am I not? But I'm also a pastor in this church, am I not? When I'm your teacher, have I stopped being a pastor of this church? Do I say now I'm putting this pastor here, now I'm being a teacher? No. Am I somebody's husband? Do I stop being somebody's husband just because I'm lecturing you? I am one person and multiple people at the same time, but not in the same relationship. Where I am seated here, I am a father. Where I am seated here, I'm a teacher. Where I'm seated here, I'm a pastor. Where I'm seated here, I'm whatever else I am. At the same time. But to my wife, I'm not a lecturer. Emma. That's a different relationship. To you, I'm not a father. It's a different relationship. So I can be one and four at the same time, but not in the same. That's the law of non-contradiction. We are saying God cannot be one and three at the same time and in the same relationship. Otherwise, we violate the law of non-contradiction. God has to be one thing and three in another thing. I've given it to you. So talk to me from your theological learning. God is one in what? And is three in what? So that's where it should be. Yes, Fred, now you have it.
God is one in essence.
In essence.
But three in persons.
Three persons.
At the same time, but different relationships.
Correct. He is one and three at the same time? Yes. But in terms of relationship, in the oneness is essential. In the threeness is personality. And we were saying, one of the problems we have today is an etymological issue, an etymological problem. I told you etymology is how words developed, isn't it? The word person, as we understand it in English, is not the classical theological reference it used to have. With us, personality refers really more to the expression of your character, expression of your being. But in Shakespearean, Elizabethan times, in Victorian language, personi was that mask an actor wore. Same actor, but if he goes backstage, comes out with the face of a woman, that actor is a woman, isn't it? Goes back, puts another mask, that actor is a man. Goes back, puts another mask, that actor is an angel. Goes back, puts another mask, that actor is a devil. The person is the same. Sorry, the essence is the same. Personi is different. But be careful with that, because modalists got confused with that along the way historically. But that's a debate for another time. You are getting on with that. Yeah, modalists had a problem with that. They did. But we can't discuss it now. Sorry. See me privately, we can have that conversation. So in terms of personi, the thing we are saying here is the distinction between ousios and personi. Ousios, essence. God shares the same essence, the same hypostasia is what the Greeks would call it. Hypostasia. In the 4th century, the formulation was that God is one in essence. One in essence. So that the Son shares in the same essence, in the same ousios, that's Latin, in the same hypostasia, that's Greek, same thing, right? That which makes me, me. Again, I quote in your hearing, Francis Schaeffer, the you. The you. Okay, the you. As in there's you, and then there's a you. What makes you, you? The totality of your being, the essence of your being. God shares that. But God is multiple in personality. Now, I told you, this is interesting now. We've answered the first apologetic difficulty with regard to the fact that the Trinitarian formulae is not a contradiction, because God is not the same, is not one and three at the same time and in the same relationship. But there is another apologetic difficulty. And this apologetic difficulty has to do, say, with the sensibility, the logicalness of our contention, of our argument. When, for example, we say God is one essence, but three personalities sharing the same essence. If we say it is not a contradiction, and we've seen it is not a contradiction, because the word contradiction is a compound of two Latin words. Contra means against, dicio means to speak. Contradiction, to speak against. Contra, against. Dicio, to speak against. We are not speaking against anything. Contradiction. So if it is not a contradiction, then the question becomes, sorry, excuse me. Forgot to put that on flight mode. Here we go. If it is not a contradiction, then what is it? What is it? Now, I introduce to you now, at this stage of our discussion, 4 possible alternatives. 4 possible alternatives. 4 possible alternatives. Alternative number 1 is what we've already dismissed, contradictio, contradiction. And we've said the Trinitarian doctrine is not a contradiction. But could it be an antinomy? Antinomy is the second alternative. Antinomy. Now, the word antinomy is a Greek compound. It is an English word now we use, but borrowed from a compound of 2 Greek words. Anti means against, right? Just like contra, okay? Contra is Latin. In the Greek we say anti or anti. Antichrist against Christ, right? So if we say antinomy, nomos is the Greek word for law. Nomos, the Greek word for law. Nomos, law. Nomos equals law. Anti equals against. Nomos equals law. So if you say antinomian, you're saying against the law. When you say antinomy, you're saying the kind of speech that is against the law. My friends, what law do you think we're talking about here? The law of non-contradiction. Okay? So dealing with antinomy, it has to be the kind of speech that is contradictory. Contradictio, all right? Speaking against the law, antinomy. Now we are saying the doctrine of the Trinity does not speak against any law, particularly the law of non-contradiction, because that's what we began to say. It doesn't contradict anything. So that second alternative is also out of the way. What's the 4th alternative? Third, yes. Third alternative. Paradox. Paradox. That's the other alternative. Paradox. Now again, you have 2 Greek words there, don't you? Para and doki. Those are the 2 words that combine to form the English word paradox. the doctrine of the Trinity be a paradox? Maybe, maybe not. The Greek word para means together with, alongside, supplementary. Para. We have something, the NYS is usually called what? National Youth Service. What is it called? A para-military. It is, the military is there. This is not a military, but it is alongside the military. Paramilitary. Paramedic. Well, these are not very well trained doctors, but they can do some paralegal. Not legal experts, but they do some legal work alongside para. Okay? Paralympics, or something like that. Paraboleo. Paraboleo is the Greek word for parable, and a parable is a story that illustrates a truth. Alongside that truth, we tell a story. Alongside that truth, paraboleo, actually, a parable. So when you say paradokio, dokio is to appear, to look like. Huh? So is the doctrine of the Trinity a paradox? No. Because, ladies and gentlemen, there is no other truth that stands alongside the doctrine of the Trinity in the same relationship. No. So it is not a paradox. What is it then? There's only another fourth alternative. There's only a fourth alternative. And the fourth alternative is mystery. 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 The Greeks called it mysterion. Mystery. Mysterion. Mystery. Why is it you have nothing to write on? You have nothing in front of you? What is going on? Oh, sorry. In the hospital? Sorry. Now, you see, a mystery is something that we do not know, either temporarily or by reason of inability. I'm going to explain that, because that's still in concrete. Now, my dear brother, Zacchaeus, do you know Gujarat? Gujarat is a language in India. Do you know Gujarat? No. So if somebody speaks in Gujarat, would you understand that person? You won't. Okay. That's a mystery for you. But let me ask another question then. If you went to an Indian school to study Gujarat, is it possible you might begin to understand a few words? That's the nature of mystery. Mystery is not a contradiction. Mystery is not a paradox. Mystery is not, what's the other thing? Contradiction, paradox, antinomy. No. Mystery is simply something that as of now I cannot access, either because time has not come or I do not have the ability, the instruments to get to it. That's a mystery. That something is a mystery does not mean it does not exist. It does not mean it is not true. Are you following what I'm saying to you? I'm going to repeat what I say. That something is a mystery does not mean it doesn't exist. that something is a mystery does not mean that that thing is not true. It only means you don't know about it. But somebody else may know about it. Now we have this thing they call coronavirus, right? Let me ask you, Florence, have you seen coronavirus with your eyes? No, you haven't. You haven't? You don't know how it looks like? Have you seen it? No. So you don't know how it looks like? Huh? But does it exist? Is it there somewhere? No, you're not sure. It's there. You see, it's a mystery for you because your knowledge doesn't have it. But somebody else with the proper equipment has knowledge for it. Let me tell you why that is important in terms of apologia, in terms of apologetics. William Marion Branham in the 60s, I believe, did make a statement and he said, the doctrine of the Trinity is of the devil. Why, Mr. Branham? Because it doesn't make sense to my mind, he said. So what Branham is saying is, it is not true because I don't understand it. And we say, you're being very stupid, Mr. Branham. In your wisdom, you have become foolish. Because not everything that you don't know is not true. There are many things you don't know which are very true. Let me ask you. Before they discovered the telescope, telescope that can telescope into the galaxies. Now you know there are telescopes that can look and see Pluto. They can actually project and see Pluto through some equipment. If somebody told you there was another world much bigger than our world, so much bigger than our world, billions and billions and billions of kilometers away, maybe millions I should say, you wouldn't believe it. You'd say you were joking. Because it is not within the purview of your knowledge. But with the discoveries, you know, people have been able to telescope that. And now we know they exist. A Russian scientist once went to the moon. And this scientist said, I looked everywhere and I didn't find God. What's the conclusion? There is no God. Psalm 14 verse 1. A fool says in his heart, there is no. That you don't know about it. That you cannot think about it. That it doesn't make sense to your mind. Does not make it not true. And there is many examples of things we don't know about, but are true, and they exist, but we don't know about them. Did you know, by the way, there is an animal, it's one animal, but it's a female and a male in the same body? Yes. An animal, you know, you're a man and there's a woman. No, in that animal, the woman and the man are in the one body. In the ocean, yes. You see, it's a mystery to you. It's not a mystery to him. For you to, no, that's not true. It's foolish. We can't accept that. You will prove yourself a fool, isn't it? Because it's a mystery to you, but it's not a mystery to him. So the fact that I don't understand something, it doesn't make sense to my mind, does not make it not true. That's the apologetic argument for the doctrine of the Trinity. At least part of the apologetic argument. Because the challenge is, you think, how, come on, please. How can one be three? Come on, please. Can't you just see it logically? And you say, no. It's not a contradiction. It's not a paradox. It's not an antinomy. But we agree it is a mystery. And ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, there are so many mysteries, not just in the Bible, but even in the world itself. So many. And part of the discussion I've always had, and I've wanted to convince my students about, is do not feel you have to have all knowledge. Don't feel that. Because you can't. Just have that, we call it intellectual honesty and spiritual modesty. Intellectual honesty is that I know what I know and I don't know what I don't know. So, look, I'm going to tell you what I know. Spiritual modesty is that I'm humble enough to say it is not possible because I'm not God to know everything. So you could ask me a question today, Mr. Naniade, and you expect me as a teacher to have all the answers. And I'll tell you, brother, I don't know about that. I mean, I just don't know. Let me go research it. And I might even research it and still not know it. And come and say, it's okay. I've seen people try to answer things, grapple with them, and make mistakes. Because you see, you might end up lying. Because you force yourself to answer something because you want to show yourself in charge. Nobody is in charge because, my friends, in the world, there are mysteries. Now, I turn your attention now to 1 Timothy chapter 3. Turn there, and let's see what Paul says here. Paul admits that there are some things about God which are mysterious, and they will always be mysterious. Very important to grasp that and to accept it. It's very, very important. Thank you. Can you read it if you find it?
I hope to come to you soon. But I'm writing these things to you so that if I delay, you may know how one ought to behave in the household of God, which is the church of the living God, a pillar and buttress of the truth. Great indeed, confess the mystery of holiness.
Wait, great indeed, we confess, is the mystery of godliness. This thing that surrounds God, there's a great mystery, and Mukenya confesses that, and Fred confesses that. We have no problem confessing it. We have no problem saying, look, we know there are some things about God that are so deep, so great, that we cannot attain to it. Isn't that true? That's the realm of mystery. But it goes on, continue.
He was manifested in the flesh.
How could we think of this great creator of the universe, this awesome power, this transcendent deity? How can we then condense him into one human being? Great is the mystery of godliness, he says. He was manifest in the flesh. Then,
Dedicated by the Spirit, seen by angels.
my dear friends, that God was seen by angels, yes?
Proclaimed among the nations, live on in the world, taken up with God.
In fact, some people believe this was a hymn that was sung in the day of Paul. This was a hymn. It's a confessional hymn. Great we confess the mystery of godliness. Oh, friends, it's not just that, is it? Go to Psalm 139. See the confession of David. This we confess. Great is the mystery of godliness. Not great is the contradiction of godliness, no, because it's not a contradiction. Not great is the antinomy of the Trinity, no. Not great is the paradox, no, but great is the mysterion, the mystery. Psalm 139.
Oh Lord,
I think you should pick it up from verse 5, perhaps.
5. You have me in behind and before, and lay your hand on me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is hard, I cannot attain
You see the confession? But does that knowledge exist? Does it exist? Come on, answer me. Does it exist? Is that knowledge there? Somewhere. Is it there? Yes, it is. But can David reach it? Mystery. There's no contradiction. It's not like it's fiction. It's not true. It is true. It is there. It's only I cannot get to it. And of course, the prophet Isaiah is told, as far as the heavens are from the earth, so are my thoughts far from your thoughts. Deuteronomy 29. Look at it. Deuteronomy 29. So when somebody begins to argue the Lord the Trinity on those grounds, you know how you challenge it. You say that you don't understand, it doesn't mean it's not true. Because there are many things you don't understand, which are still true, but you don't understand them. I think so, yes.
The secret things belong to the Lord.
Oh dear.
Our God. The things that are real belong to us.
Look at Proverbs 25. Go to Proverbs 25. This is a truth that is all over the Bible. You find it all through. Proverbs 25. Let me see what we are dealing with here. I'm going to find you the exact verse in a moment. Verse 2, I think.
Verse 2.
Mm.
It is the glory of God to conceal things, but the glory of kings is to search things out.
We will keep searching, but God will keep concealing. Isn't it? Because His glory depends on it. Shall we put it that way, reverently? The glory of God depends on Him keeping some things from us. Ben, if you know everything about God, then that day you become God yourself. Do you not understand that even when we come to heaven, brothers and sisters, we will not know everything exhaustively about God? There are some things that will remain a mystery, and that's why we will continually, forever, eternally fall on our knees and worship Him and say, how great Thou art. The very basis of worship is this idea that God is immense, God is awesome. So important. So very important. Are you with it now? So the idea of mystery is important. Now, I need to say something in terms of Pauline theology. As Paul writes his letters, Paul uses the word mystery in a rather different context, rather. Paul describes mystery as those things that were once hidden but have now been revealed. That's why Paul talks about the mystery of the gospel, right? The mystery of godliness, the mystery of Christ, the mystery of iniquity. 4 great mysteries Paul talks about. But of course talks about the mystery of the gospel. This idea that Jew and Gentile will one time be in the same church. Nobody could think about it, but God revealed it in the end. Before they didn't know it, then He revealed it, and now they know it. And there are some things that God will reveal when we come to heaven that we did not know, which we will know. Listen, when you're dealing with the nature of Christ, because remember that's the next apologetic issue, isn't it? The person and nature of Christ. Really, we are dealing with the same thing, almost, as a Trinitarian argument. Because in Christ, we are claiming, at least the Bible makes the assertion, that Christ was God and man at the same time, but not in the same. Now, describe that for me, please. Help me with that. Having come from that discussion of the Trinity, this should not be difficult. So, how are you able to help me through with that? Remember again, we said God is not 1 and 3 at the same time and in the same relation. That is, God is 1 in essence, ousios, hypostasia, but 3 in persona, isn't it? As it relates to the doctrine of the hypostatic union of Christ, how do we apply that same logic to say the hypostatic union is not a contradiction, is not a paradox, is not an antinomy, maybe a mystery, but not the three. What's the relationship that Christ sustains with regard to the oneness and the two-ness, if you like? No, I don't think so. No. Christ is one in what? It's not essence now. In fact, we're reversing the thing now. Christ is one in person. How many people do we have in Christ? How many? How many? Fred, how many? One. One person. One people. We have one person in Christ. Christ is not two people. Christ is one person. But we are saying in the one person, there is how many natures? Two, Naliaja, thank you. Two natures. The human and the divine. So we are not contradicting anything. We are not engaging in paradox. Not at all. Because Christ is one in one thing, which is a person, but two in another thing, which is nature. If we said Christ is one in nature and two in nature, we are violating the law of contradiction, antinomy, paradox, and we can't even talk about mystery. But the next apologetic difficulty is, how does the divine nature coexist with the human nature without resulting in two persons? Now that we say is what? Come on, give it to me. What is that? What is that? It's not a paradox, it's not a contradiction. Antinomy, it is a what? It's mystery. Is it not true? It is true. Do we understand it? No. And the idea of mystery is, it is something that is true, but we do not understand it, either because the time has not come or because we do not have the ability to comprehend that thing. The third apologetic subject, the exclusivity of the Christian religion, again falls almost. You see, apologia is get the broad principles, they will apply in every. That's the approach we took. Paint very broad principles, think through those principles, apply them in the different apologetic debates and discussions. So, for example, on the exclusivity of the Christian religion, I'm applying the same principles. Basic epistemological arguments, basic rules of logic, right? And the four alternatives. I'm applying those to defend what we believe. The existence of God, we defend it that way. The Trinitarian doctrine, we defend it that way. The person of Christ and his nature, we defend it using the same principles. Now when we deal with the exclusivity of the Christian religion and the way of salvation, we are saying, for example, does Christianity teach that there is many ways to God? Some Christians say that, but does Christianity teach that? Christianity teaches, John 14 verse 6, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. No one comes to the Father except by me. The Christian preacher and person says, if you do not go through Christ, you're lost. Period. No equivocation. Muhammad won't take you there. Mary won't take you there. Buddha won't take you there. Confucius won't take you there. Plato won't take you there. Socrates won't take you there. It doesn't matter who you are, Guru Krishna. Doesn't matter. We say there is only one way, and that is Jesus Christ and faith in Him. Now there are Christian people who say if we speak like that, we are speaking arrogantly. We are being divisive. We are not considerate. And so they prefer to say, oh, everybody has their way to God. The Muslim eventually will get to God, and the Hindu will eventually get to God. And we say, no, you cannot say that and still maintain that the Bible is true. If the Bible is true, then there's only one way. And if you have to speak of another way, you cannot reconcile 2-3 ways with John 14:6. A cannot be non-A at the same time and in the same relationship. If we are talking about acceptance with God and going to heaven, there's only Jesus and there's only faith in Him that takes us there. And I think you've got to grasp those apologetic arguments and have them under your belt. So in fact, you can sustain a reasonable degree of argument and a defense of the faith, apologia. The fifth that remains, which I won't deal with today, is going to take us about 3 lectures, is the reliability and truthfulness of Scripture, the Bible. And here we're going to deal with the doctrine of biblical inerrancy, all right, which we should have dealt with in your hermeneutics. We did not. We carried it forward. And then we're going to deal with that which we call theories of translation. Why do we have that translation of the Bible, and why does the other person have the other one, and what is the weakness of the other one? The theories of translation, direct translation, literal translation, dynamic equivalence, so on and so forth. Why do some people prefer the original or the authorized King James Version to any other Bibles? Why do I, for example, think the English Standard Version is a very good translation? Why do I, in fact, tell you, if you have the New Living Translation of Holy Scriptures or the Good News, I would even take it and tear it? Why do we think like that? How do we think, for example, of those things that people claim are contradictions in the Bible? Mistakes in numbers, mistakes in the timings of Jesus' resurrection. Because Luke says this and Mark says that. How do we reconcile those? Are there mistakes? Can we trust the Bible? The truthfulness, that's a subject we're going to take at least 2 or 3 lectures to deal with. And then we should be wrapping up this course of apology. Okay? Any question now? I know I've done a very extended lecture. That's fine. Any question? Again, listen. I know I've said this for the 18th time, and I'm going to say it again. My objective throughout this course is not to make you a philosopher, no, because I'm not one myself. I'm not. There's a sense in which I don't even care how much you take in, really. But I'm hoping that your mind is stretching. All right, that's my hope. Because at the end of this course, if your mind could, if you stretch a rubber, then there's only that far it can get. Even if it goes just a little bit. So there's more thinking capacity. So that's fine. Because I think the big problem of our time I had a lovely visit from two American people yesterday, MC and Eddie. I had lunch in my place yesterday. And they were talking about the same thing, and they're frustrated really with what they see around you. It would appear our people do well when they're told, you write a list for them. You do this, once you do that, you do this, once you do that, you do this, and then this one, you do this, and then. So you give them the precise instruction because we just don't think. We are not thinkers. We just are not thinkers. And I'm sorry, our education system didn't help us much. The 844 is probably the worst system, we say pedagogical system ever, I think. It's terrible. I mean, Francis, how do you give a kid paper like this? 50 questions, each question has 4 multiple choices. If I close my eyes and put a pen and it falls on C, that could be the right answer. It could. And we say we are examining the child. You see the problem? And sadly, most of us have been raised through that system, including myself here. And my teacher used to say, if you cannot think, you cannot preach. Now, if you guys, you attended that apologetics, whatever, it would be not the same thing as what we're doing here. In fact, I have the liberty to present to WTC what my own learning in Nairobi didn't present. I mean, Nairobi College is presuppositional in the approach to apologetics. In fact, they're very strong on that. I think that's a wrong approach. Well, it's not a wrong approach. That's the wrong word I'm using. It's an inadequate approach. It's not enough. You've got to approach it from a classical position as well. But I have that liberty of thinking because I like to think. And I hope that is the one thing I don't lose in my life, thinking. So that's the point. So if you left this class feeling, sikupata vitu mingi, don't worry about it. That's not the issue. That's not the issue. You'll fail in your paper, yeah. It will look, there will be an E or a D. But I'm not really concerned about that really as much. Okay. I'm going to leave it there. No question. So